Hello, good afternoon, or I don't know which part of the day it is for you. Welcome to the presentation about clean code and see if it is really worth it to invest the time. I'm saying you beforehand that this is a story of monsters, heroes, challenges, but finally wins. So let's start with a big number, $2 trillion. This is the cost of poor quality code annually. So that's a big number. Take it in your head. But also 4 days per month and per developer. That's the time spent on fixing errors. Those are two super big numbers. So let's see if we can make this lower. Okay. So I'm Jonathan Vila, and I'm here to present you this presentation about clean code. I've Java in passion, and I've been selected as Java champion in the past. I'm also community driven, and I've been one of the leaders of the Barcelona Java user group for the last 10 years, and also co-founder of JVCN Conf and the VCN conferences. I've been speaking in several conferences, DevNexus, DevOps, JNation, well, lots of them, and now I'm super happy and glad to be here at Confer Conf. Also, I've been developing in several languages because I've been there for the last 30 years coding, starting in Pascal, but going through Visual Basic, Delphi, Golang, Python, and Java. You can have this QR code in order for you, if you want to contact me, uh, use it. In regards my professional work, so I've been working in the let's say latest companies, NetCentric, Okada Technology, Red Hat, or Tetrate. But now I'm working for Sonar as a developer advocate. You have in my slides below the link if you want to check these slides, or also my Twitter handle if you want to just follow me or send me some info. Well, what is Sonar? Sonar is a company with several products, and basically focused on clean code and helping developers to reach the level of be clean coders. They have SonarLint. This is a tool that you can integrate with your IDE, and also SonarCube and SonarCloud that can allow you to have multiple repositories and then check which are the number of bugs, issues, even to configure quality gates in order to prevent or allow code to be merged in master or main branch. Please, if you want to know more, check the sonarsource.com link or ask me if you want more help. So the agenda for today's presentation, well, first I will give you a definition of poor quality code. Then, okay, we've seen a number, but let's dig a bit more into this, the cost of it, the definition of clean code. So we know what it is poor quality code. Then let's see what it is clean code. Some recipes in order to be aligned with that goal. I will show you some issues detected on public repositories using our Sonar tools and see, well, how are the most detected issues in those public repositories. Also, interesting hints or, well, things that you can take into consideration in order to also go in this goal of being clean code. Some tools that we can use in order to, well, to make the work easier. And I will show you which is the way. So, I mean, in this case, which is the proposed way of tackling bad code, or the best way of being aligned into the clean code goal. Some references if you want to dig more into this issue. And let's start with our monster. So first of all, I will introduce Porky, that it is the poor quality code devil. So this is the monster that we need to fight. Okay, just have it in mind. It has several heads, but let's check which is well, I don't know, which is the behavior of Porky. Well, Porky exhibits buggy behavior. So you think he's going to do something, and it is doing all other things in the end. It's also has high coupling and low cohesion. So I mean, you have a lot of classes connected, depending one of the other, and then the elements of a feature are scattered across the code. So it makes code unmaintainable. It's hard to fix issues and also implement new features. It's also using obsolete libraries, frameworks, not being up to date. And it has a lot of code repetition that, well, it will make the developer to change several places when he or she wants to improve the code. It also has more properties in its behavior, but these are some of them that we need to have in mind. But is this everything? Are there any other things involved into this porky behavior? Well, definitely yes. So also, it is also susceptible to CVEs, common vulnerabilities, and exposure. So low security. That means probably you will need to spend money when someone is suing you for, I don't know, security breaches, exposing credit cards or any other sensitive information. It's also prone to memory leaks and low throughput because you are having big classes or big elements of code that are doing several things, but probably they are doing things that are not required every time. Also, you are not using latest libraries that are updated and are optimized. Also, it doesn't have deterministic results because of its complexity. It makes super hard to do well testing. um, Therefore, probably you are not doing all the tests that you should do. And related to this one, the non-deterministic results also involved it in memory leaks and classes doing a lot of things. This makes harder to create a specific tests that are testing specific functionalities. This will also create altogether a high technical depth that well is going to define your project, and it's going to be every time that passes more and more difficult to tackle and to solve. So which is the cost of these porky attacks? Well, porky attacks are everywhere, every time. And we can see that if you have a healthy code, let's say you have code that is well aligned with clean code, you are going to have uh, less defects. In the contrary, this poor quality code is going to have um, way more defects and bugs that you need to solve. This means that the cost of poor quality code is around 2.5 trillions, plus a technical debt involved in the design and the libraries involved is 1.5 trillions. And interesting enough is to know that the to find and fix bugs is costing around 600 billions. So we are talking about a lot of money. But it's not everything lost. We have our hero called Kleen, also known the quiet developer. So probably some of you will be seeing yourself in this Kleen character. And what Kleen does in a regular day? Well, Kleen introduces new features. Yeah, that's the main goal for a company, right? Also fixes bugs. Yeah, as we've seen, we are investing a lot of time fixing bugs. But yeah, there's a little time for tech debt fixing. You know that. It's always procrastination in tech debt fixing. But also, Clean studies new technologies to use the latest libraries, frameworks, and ways of doing things, and also goes to meetup and conferences like this one. And that's something that we need to give a round of applause, because it's very important to go to meetups and conferences. Community is power. Don't forget don't forget it. But what else? Well, we are all in several meetings every day, and I don't know you, but I'm in several times saying to my colleagues, hey, you're on mute, and way more times receiving, hey, Jonathan, you are on mute. So I don't know. We should also have metrics to know how much time we spend on saying you're on mute. Nah, for the future. And also, why not? So Kleen also finishes each day complaining and ranting about old code and how difficult it is for him to implement new features. So the goal for our hero, for Kleen, is to get to the nirvana of software. So let's see how do we define this nirvana of software. So software that it reaches the level of nirvana has to be secure. So not having CVEs or specific implementations of the common weaknesses and exposures. It has to be maintainable, so not lots of mm, coupling between classes and elements, and it has to be also very reliable. It does mean that you need to have a right number of tests of the right tests. So you should test a lot, but also to test right, having the good tests. And also, if you can make it as portable as it can be, in order to not be tied to a specific implementation of a technology. Therefore, if they change, if they go out of business, you are completely alone, and you will struggle. But there's a lot also another thing involved in this nirvana is the nirvana for you. So for Kleen, as a developer, well, he also needs to reach a nirvana. And what does it mean for Kleen to reach a nirvana? Well, Kleen wants to be confident about the code that he is deploying, confident about the results of the code that he is deploying, but also proud. So, okay, I'm confident that my code is doing what it is expected to do, but I need to be proud of my code. So it's not like I did some code without thinking too much. It's done. It's doing what it is expected, but I don't feel proud about it. Let's feel proud about our code, and also skilled. So Kleen wants to be a better developer every time, every day, and a better developer. So he wants to invest in himself and also being every day a bit better than the day before. So that's very important also for reaching the nirvana for the developer. So in this case, what Kleen decided to do is to join the Clean Code Warriors order. In this order, he knows that they have principles, and these are the principles of a Clean Code Warrior. So they need to consider security. Okay, that's important because we've seen that there's a lot of money involved. They are not going to repeat code to make it harder than to modify it and improve it. They are not going to do things that they don't need now and they think they are going to need next year. They are going to have readable and explanatory naming for everything, just to not need to rely a lot on comments, and that every developer can have a clear idea of what the code is doing. Reducing the cognitive complexity. Well, we will talk about cognitive complexity in a moment, but for the moment, it's just considering reducing the complexity for the reader. Also, boy scouting sometimes, okay, you need to also fix a bit of the others code when you are submitting new code. Also, following the solid principles, so single responsibility, open close principle, Liskov, interface segregation, and dependency inversion. Then you need to test your code and test it well. It's not a matter of having a high coverage, but doing stupid tests. You need to do right tests and covering most of the code that you are doing, or at least the most that you can. Keeping the code simple and don't over engineering. Yeah, sometimes we do this, because it's cool. I've heard about a new technology that is amazing. Well, amazing technologies are happening, I would say, every year. So After 1 year, they are not as amazing as they were. But please keep things simple, because yeah, why not? You don't need to over engineering. Finally, and one of the most important ones is wash your hands. You are using your keyboard all day long, so you don't know how many bugs are there in a keyboard. If you haven't watched it, watch Gattaca, and you will know what I mean. And Kleen knows that this order is also having the book. They have one book. There are others, but one of the most ancient books about clean code, and they try to also follow it uh, the more they can. They can. But when Kleen joins the order of the clean code warriors, well, he's going to be trained, giving him several fighting tricks in order for him to become the purple ninja, the orange ninja, the white ninja. So let's see which are those tricks that this order is going to teach him. Okay, so for instance, don't repeat yourself. So, okay, on the left, you see that we are using 2 times the same code. Okay, just abstract it, or well, move this code into a method, and that's it. Don't so just reuse it. Kiss and yang, so keep it simple, and you ain't gonna need it. In this case, we were requested to sum numbers, and we thought, why not? Let's try. I'm going to show that I'm a super white ninja in Java, and I'm going to create a complicated class. But at the end, it's just only summing 5 plus 10. Just do it. And if you need this for several times, then you can think about creating a method. Boy Scouting. Okay, you've done your code. You see, oh, there's a warning here saying there's a parameter not being used. Remove it. Just clean a bit the place where you are developing. Let's make it a bit better than it was when we received the code. The same as with deprecated elements. In this case, using the default constructor for URL that it is deprecated in Java 20. Just use the new method. Single responsibility. Okay, we have here a book that's an entity. It is supposed to just simply store books, but someone has added a method that it's also adding the printing responsibility to this class. Okay, just move this out of the entity. The entity only needs to be a storage. Open close principle. Well, it's simple. In this case, we have a vehicle that also includes a motor. This motor has a method that it's combusting. Okay, this vehicle works fine for gasoline vehicles, but what about diesel vehicles? What about electrical vehicles? What about Star Trek plasma vehicles? Okay, so we would need to modify the class completely. Okay, just move it to different interfaces that are implementing a common interface, and then the vehicle just will simply have a dependency with that abstraction. That will make things easier. And in the future, if we have the super warp hyper space motor that can makes us travel as light speed, then we will not have to modify the vehicle. List of. Well, in this case, we are using on the left uh, a class that is extending a superclass, but is redefining the behavior of the parent class. We shouldn't do that. So in this case, we are having a person, and we are also having a kid that extends a person, but the person also can pay, but the kid, well, in most of the places, kids cannot pay. So what we are doing is saying, okay, the kid, we will throw an exception if someone tries to make a kid pay. Okay, just redefine it, create a person, and then we will have an adult and a kid, and only the adult will have the method to pay. So not making superclasses having more methods than are needed, and not making subclasses redefining parent behaviors. With interface segregation, okay, in this case, we have an animal. interface, this animal, we thought that an animal can breathe, can fly, can swim, and can move in space. So we have a dolphin that effectively implements animal, but when we try to call fly for a dolphin, we throw an exception. And when we try to move a dolphin in space, we say, what do you say? I don't understand that. But what if we have a sharknado? Sharknados can breathe, can fly, can swim, and can move in space. So what we need to do is segregate this interface into smaller interfaces, and then we will have a sharknado that can that it's an animal that breathes, also can fly, also can swim, and also can move out of space. But keeping the dolphin just only being an animal and also swimming. Dependency inversion. Okay, in this case, what we are having here is a book and a shelf that contains books. Well, what we don't want is that, okay, now imagine that we want to also put in the shelf CDs, DVDs, any other things. Okay, in this case, we have our parent class that is depending on the on a implementation class. So this do not have this link between a super and an implementation detail, just creating another product class that then DVD, book, and other things will depend on that thing, and the shelf will depend on this generic product thing. With this, we are going to not having dependencies of specific implementations. Naming. Okay, this is very easy. Everybody understands that. It's very obvious, but not always used. In this case, we have a class with a private member called A, or another A name that is going to be hard to be read because it's in lowercase, or even two members being called IG or LG. So make things more easy and give proper names, and we consider the readability for the developer. Okay, so these are the core principles. Now we have Kleen trained with the core principles, with the fighting skills. We know which is the monster, Porky. So let's see, just before going to battle, how it is the status. Which are the houses that are burning in this case? So most detected issues, we have the cognitive complexity of functions should be not be too high. So we have high complexity. We have uh, assignments not used, local variables that should be removed, a lot of to-do tags there. We have even parameters that are not being used in a function. Row types. So I mean, we should always try to use wrapper types instead of row types. Also, private fields that are not being used in a class, that they should be removed. Generic exceptions instead of specific exceptions. Local variables that are declared and then immediately returned. You know that A equals get blah blah blah, return A. Okay, just return directly the get. And use private methods. So that's also something very important to consider, that there are a lot of private methods that are not being used. Okay. Reference to null. So we are accessing things that they could be null. So we could experience some null pointer exceptions if we are not checking the null of those properties. And also, it was very impressive for me, 9 million issues about methods that should not be empty. So I don't know exactly which is the point of methods empty, but that's the case. So what if we group them, we have complexity, dead or useless code, comments, design, error handling, and null handling. These are, let's say, the 12 major issues that we found in public repositories. Regarding security issues, well, uh, a secure password should be used when connecting a database. So we are using wrong ways of creating passwords. We are not considering XML parsers that can be vulnerable also to attacks. Also, endpoints are being vulnerable because of cross-site scripting. And surprisingly enough, a lot of issues about credentials should not be hard-coded. That's scary. And there's another one that it's involving function calls. So when we try to get to a file, we are using a path that it is coming from a variable configured by the user. That could be also very vulnerable. So we have here two categories, credentials and injection or script. This is then summary. So we have in public repositories, we have a lot of that code. We have complexity problems, a lot of to-do blocks, error handling, null handling, and vulnerability. So there are lots of issues that we should solve. So now there's a null warrior that comes into the movie saying, okay, Kleen, I know that you are trained, but I'm going to tell you good tricks that are coming only from a golden ninja. So let's see some of the hints for our hero. So first, vulnerability and security challenges. So let's see. Credentials should not be hard coded. Man, don't use hard coding in your code and just get secrets from uh, an external repository that will store secure all those passwords. Database queries. Okay, if you are concatenating the elements to create a query, probably you will end up with these SQL injections as we saw here. So he is trying to trick the police database whenever a fee is sent to this user. Okay, so just use parameters and prepare statements. HTTP redirections. Okay, don't use an element coming from a user in order to do a redirection. If you do that, then check the allowed redirections that you are accepting. Therefore, you are avoiding that someone will introduce some bad redirections. Regarding bugs and code smell challenges, okay, so in this case, if you use a Spring Boot application or component scan, don't use them in the default package. Because if you do so, Spring is going to scan for the complete class path. Therefore, someone can put a jar there, and then you will have beans that you are not expecting. So put everything below a package that you control. In this case, in synchronized methods, don't use sleep because this is blocking. Instead of that, use wait because this will release the lock, and then it's more efficient. Regarding printf style format strings, it's hard to make them work at the first time. Sometimes you are putting more arguments than in the string. Sometimes you are putting the wrong arguments in the wrong order are the string. So it's important to maintain the order, the type. In this case, we are not specifying the type. It should be better just if we specify that is a string what we are passing. Assertions. Okay, that's a silly one, but people always amaze people. If you create assertions that are not asserting anything, in this case on the left, we are not asserting anything. We, as a first sight, we see, okay, there's an assert, but it's not asserting. So this test will happen successfully. So we need to do an assertion of something. Test should include assertions. When you are creating your test, you could be super focused on the things that you need to create in order to test that you forget about adding an assertion. Then your method will execute successfully, and it's hard to point that you are not in fact asserting anything here too. In Java 19, for instance, instead of using the default constructor for hash map, passing a capacity, use this new method, new hash map, static method coming from hash map, because the second one is going to secure, it's going to effectively provide this number of elements. In the left side, it's going to do dynamically by bunches. So if you are setting 1 million, probably they will allocate 1,000, and then when it is reaching the level, it will allocate 1,000 more. So this is impacting performance. And regarding design and complexity, Okay, so in this case, I'm going to explain what is cognitive complexity. Here we have cyclomatic complexity that we are all familiar with. On the left side, we have a cyclomatic complexity of 5. In the right side, we have cyclomatic complexity 5. But you would agree with me that the two parts are not equally readable. So there's another concept called cognitive complexity that will take into consideration these differences in order to be to read a code. In this case, on the left side, we have a method with cognitive complexity 9. Is exactly the same code as before. And on the right, we have this cognitive complexity, but equals to 1. So there's a huge difference, and this can impact the total complexity allowed in your code. Therefore, you can just avoid adding code that it is too complex to be read. So in the end, you will find references to see exactly which are the elements involved into the calculation. But it's also considering the indentation to the right, and yeah, so you can check at the end. Also, there's another thing that is very important. Do not make your classes depending on a lot of classes. That's increasing the coupling. So it's better if you try to reduce the dependencies on your class. Also, methods should not perform too many tasks, what is called the brain method. On the left, you have one method that is doing a lot. And we've refactored this code into 3 smaller methods. Probably this would allow us to test better the behavior and to use more use cases in the test. And also, it's more understandable what is doing each of the parts. So just try to avoid super huge methods. So in summary, there are lots of things. So hundreds of rules, plus your internal rules from your company in order to have a common way of doing coding. Um, you need, so who is going to check all these elements that Kleen is going to use in order to fight Porky? Well, Kleen. So you while you are coding, you while you are reviewing the code from others, when well, for every commit that you do, or for every pull request that someone has created. So there's a lot of things to do for a single person for several times. And in the end, there's also another consideration that is okay, and what Kleen needs to focus on the whole project. So the whole village with hundreds of houses burning, or only on the new code that he is producing. So let's see which weapons are available for Kleen in order to combat, to fight Porky. Well, basically static analyzers like PMD, Sonarlin, Checkstyle, Findbooks. Uh, so there are tools that will analyze your code and will check if you are introducing issues. Also, they are going to check for bugs and for vulnerabilities. So those are going to help you if you are not considering one of the issues or several of them. Also, these static analyzers can also be used in your IDE directly while you are coding. So in this case, I'm coding, and um, the IDE is telling me, okay, you have here a variable that is never used, so you should remove it. Okay, so this is happening while I'm coding, not at the end of the day, not at the end of the week, but while I'm coding. This is very important. In these linters are there are lots of them free and available for the main IDEs, Clips, Visual Studio, IntelliJ, Visual Studio Code, and others. Also, there's another important weapon that is, okay, your company can rely on you that you are using a linter and not submitting code that is not aligned with clean code. But they want something to prevent that. So let's imagine that you forgot you are not using your linter, whatever. They want something that will allow or prevent bad code to be merged into the main repository. There are tools that will check those issues that are configured by the company, setting which are the number of issues allowed, or if minor issues, a number of them is allowed or not, if only a major issue is preventing the merge, or if the code coverage is not enough. Some things, even configuring some of the rules, just saying, okay, I don't care about these rules, but I care more about all of them. So those tools will allow also to prevent or to allow code being merged. But there's an expected peril. So there are dangers hidden in the village. The false positives. So, okay, Kleen can use those tools, can be aware, but in the end, those tools can just be reporting too much information. So they can report issues that when you take a look to them, you think, wow, man, this is not a real issue. Then it can happen because of those analyzers are not considering a lot of code, or your code is, I don't know, somehow has a configuration that the analyzer cannot see. There are different reasons for that, but the important thing is that if you find a false positive, you can resolve the issue as a false positive in some of the tools, and then this will prevent this issue to happen again and to bother you with information that you really don't care. You need to take this into consideration when you are selecting which tools are you going to use, because as I said here, too much info can be similar to the lack of it. So if you are overloaded with information, the reaction that can happen is that you will no longer um, have faith in your tool, and probably you will simply stop using it. So it's very important, these false positives regarding the tool that you are going to use. And now that Clint has all the information, let's see which is the voyage that our hero needs to do in order to be aligned to fight Porky and be the clean code warrior that he wants to be. It's not going to be this voyage as complicated and as long as the voyages of Magallanes or Elcano. I totally assure you that it's not as complicated, and you won't lose as many people too. So Clean, what he has to do is to focus on new code. So in here we have several fires and even a tornado. Clean code, Clean needs to look in front, just focusing on new code. You can define the new code, what it is, previous version of number of days, or specific analysis that you did in the past, or even a reference branch. So all the changes are considered new code. So instead of trying to solve everything, just try to solve the new code that you are producing. But as always, don't forget to be a Boy Scout sometimes in order to fight old fires at least a bit. And when I say focus on new code, the reason behind is that if you take a look at the Git of Theseus, which explain now what it is, well, a chart that it says that after 5 years, only 37% of the code is still there. So as the time passes, the code is also dying. Therefore, there's no point on trying to fix past issues that eventually this code will disappear. As you can see here on the right, code created on 2010 is almost unexisting on 2022. So you can see that all code generated, the percentage is very small in 2022. So don't focus on all code. And why it is said, what it is called the Git of Theseus, it's because it related to story called The Ship of Theseus. The Ship of Theseus is a story based on if you have an old ship that you are replacing one part at a time by a new part, eventually you end up having a ship that has all the parts replaced. The question is it still the same ship? That's why we are focusing on new code because there's no point on trying to fix old code that eventually will disappear. So the outcome of all this story is that Kleen is going to chop one head at a time. Instead of trying to kill the beast, what we are trying to do is to prevent new heads uh, appearing and cutting one head at a time. This is called clean as you code, or in the case of clean, clean as you walk, one head at a time. These are references that you can explore if you want to take more into, well, if you have interest on these topics. And, well, as I said before, you can check the slides and then you can link to these references. And that has been all. This has been the movie. I hope you enjoyed. Jonathan, me as the voiceover for the whole movie. Porky as the monster of the poor quality code. Then we had Kleen playing the character of the quiet developer. Also, we had a special appearance, Russell doing the Boy Scout character. And finally, the Kleen brother as the trained warrior fighting Porky. That has been all. Thank you very much. And please, please, please scan the survey QR and give me feedback that will help me in future presentations and in order to improve myself. Thank you very much and hope you enjoyed.